You might be thinking, wow, this is really breaking from form. Are you telling me Layla's favorite character isn't Hilo? Are you telling me it's not the shit heel? And the answer is yes, it's not the shit heel. Because you know what trumps shit heeliness is dad. Lon functions as a dad, and
a sad, mopey dad.
Just the saddest father, and I love him very much for that.
Welcome to Mortified, the Friendship Quest, a podcast where two long-distance friends bounce media recommendations all in hopes the other will like it. I'm Aaron.
And I'm a fist.
And this week, we talked about Fonda Lee's 2017 fantasy gangster novel, Jade City. Before we strap on our moonblades and come down from the mountain, remember you can help us on Mortified the Legitimacy Quest by subscribing to us on YouTube, iTunes, or Spotify, signing up for our monthly newsletter through the link in our show notes, or following us on Twitter at MortifiedPod. Leyla, how have you been?
Bad. How are you been? How are you been?
Bad. You all faithful listeners will note that we missed last week. That was because our government almost got overthrown by white supremacists, and we felt sad about it.
Yeah, we weren't doing great, and arguably, still are working towards greatness.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it usually takes me about, 12 hours to get this show up, so hopefully by Tuesday, January 19th, our government is still intact. We'll see.
Can brace itself for Wednesday, January 20th.
Yeah, that's the real one, so hopefully this podcast doesn't age poorly, but, that is the reason we didn't have an episode last week. I would say that we're sorry, but I'm really not. There is no way we're going to put out an episode after the mental state that I was in, certainly. So
yeah, honestly, we would probably be more entertaining if we put out the very sad, low-energy Akira episode we have in the bank than if we had recorded that day.
Yes. If you DM me, if you Venmo me $100, I will send you the Akira audio. It'll be a really bad use of your money, so don't do that. But we are hopefully going to have a high energy conversation about one of my favorite series that I'm so glad I finally forced somebody to read. I have been talking about this series ever since I read it in like early 2018. Leyla, can you go ahead and really quickly sum up what you read in Jade City?
Sure. Okay, so Jade City is written by Fonda Lee, and it is a wide-spanning crime saga about two mafia-esque clans in a place colloquially referred to as Jade City. Was it Janloon? Is the actual name of it?
Janloon, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's No Peak Clan and Mountain Clan. They used to be one thing, and now they're not one thing anymore. And it's a book about escalating tensions on both sides until they erupt into a violent conflict. A Jade War, if you will, which is the name of the sequel.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, that basically sums it up. It's if The Godfather was way cooler and was all Asian people with magic powers. I think it slaps. There is a lot of fun to be had just exploring, we'll talk about it, but Fonda Lee, I think, does some of the best world building in literature. I think she has such a unique way of deploying her characters and using them as lenses with which to view the world. And she created this, I listened to this interview that she did last week, where she was talking about how she didn't want to create like set Janloon in a specific like analog. Like it's not Hong Kong, it's not Shanghai. It's just like fantasy generic East Asia. But like it is also impacted by fantasy colonial powers, and I think it's such a neat idea to incorporate, myths of the mafia, of course, but also the Yakuza. And like all these organized crime families, and put them in a story about like a formalized system of crime that operates alongside the government and is in many ways more powerful than the government. Um, and well, this we're getting pretty ahead of it. I'm getting ahead of everything, but like this is all very high-minded stuff. But she grounds it in these characters, which I think are very interesting and fun. And why don't we just start there? Leyla, do you have a favorite character?
Yes, Wen and Lan.
Okay, yes. Okay, excellent choices. Can you tell us about, let's start with Lan and then you can explain when.
Okay, Lan is great. I love. Okay, so dear listeners, if you've read this book, you might be thinking, "Wow, this is really breaking from form. Are you telling me Layla's favorite character isn't Hilo? Are you telling me it's not the shit heel?" And the answer is yes, it's not the shit heel. Because you know what trumps shit heeliness is dad. Lan functions as a dad, and a
sad mopey dad.
Just the saddest father, and I love him very much for that. No, Lan is great. He's very reserved and calculating, but in a fun way. I really liked being in his head for that part of like the narration, and like genuinely, spoiler, skip 15 seconds now if you don't want to know. When he died, I was genuinely sad. Like, I was sad. Not only because I think you were right about the world building, but also the character building is so good because Lan doesn't die because Lan was assassinated. Lan dies because he thought too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And he missed a step.
Yep.
And died on accident, which was tragic. But I really liked him. He was like missed. Like I missed him, and it was something to see how much the void of him was felt in both the organization and in the family. And then I loved Wen since the first fucking minute she was introduced, because that bitch's boyfriend snuck into a window, like pretended to try to kidnap, not fully, but tried to spook her for a second.
Yeah.
They both thought it was funny, so it was fine. But like, she got boned and then immediately was giving him business advice, and it was like good business advice. And she was like, "I'm not going anywhere near your goddamn house unless you put a ring on it. Excuse me. Hi, hello." And he did put a ring on it, and then she went to the house, and within 3 weeks she had remodeled it and then gotten her sister-in-law to like give her this badass secret job. I was like, yes, we love a shrewd woman. We love a power player. She's great. I am terrified for her. I don't think she's going to survive the next book, but I love her.
Yep, Jade War imperils Wen. So, you'll look forward to that. But we should explain the magic system real quick. So the reason that it's a fantasy is because there's Jade, like, Jade, the gem. So in this world, Jade is magic, and it basically gives you superpowers. Like you can move really fast, and you can create like energy fields, and you can, stop people's hearts. But Jade is like, it's sort of like, it's a little bit like a drug because you have to build up a tolerance to it. You start when you're very young, and your parents will let you handle like smaller pieces of jade, like little pebbles. And as you get older and older, right, if you grow up in these crime families, you get the ability to like, you start earning jade from fights and from, various honors, and that makes you more powerful. But like, the problem is when you get too much jade, or if you haven't been trained enough in the use of jade, it's too powerful for you, and you essentially, become addicted to it, and you slowly, start to dissociate and have psychotic episodes, and it eventually kills you. So what's interesting about Wen is that she is of this genetic line where she doesn't have she's what they call a stone eye, because she's not affected by jade at all, which makes her super important when she's doing spy shit, because it's just like, oh, I can smuggle jade in because like they can't detect it on me because I don't give off a jade aura. It's really cool. And Wen fucking slaps because like she's like one of the weakest people in this world, because she just like doesn't have magic powers, and she's like, I don't really give a shit. My boyfriend, who is an idiot, is also the most powerful man in John Loon now after his brother got shot. So I've got to fucking do work, and I'm not afraid, despite everyone having magic powers and the ability to like cut cars in half and shit. Like, I'm here. When rules.
Yeah, I think the line was your brother, because when she was talking to Shay, which is the one of the three Call
Yeah, the
siblings.
calls. Yeah,
So there's Hilo, there's Shay, and there's Lon. I love Shay too. She's a close third, but Wen and Lon really took it for me. When she's talking to Shay, she says something along the lines of like, "Your brother loves me so much, he wants to protect me, and I love him so much that I need to disobey him," or it's like something like that. But I'm like,
yeah.
you rule. This is awesome. It's gonna cause a horrible rift in this family later. But you're thinking rules, and I love that for you.
Yeah.
Who are your favorites?
I mean, unfortunately, I'm very much like an elder sibling and a rule follower, so Lon was my favorite. And then he got capped, and then also had a heart attack. So, oops.
Press F to pay respects for
Yeah.
Lon.
I think I like Andon though. Andon is very much appealing to me because he's like, oh, very good in school, but also shy and like that fucking tortured genius bullshit that I, as a 13-year-old, identified with. So like, I liked Andon. His story is very interesting because his parents, I believe, I don't remember if both of them, but at least his mom died because of a jade addiction. Like she was exposed to it too much, and like this book has I don't know, the way that it plays with genes, like only the people from KCON Fantasy Asia can like use jade properly without the aid of a drug that the Westerners developed. So like it becomes a big issue for Andon because like his family is considered thin blooded, which means that like they can't handle their jade and like that's supposed to be bad luck. But he's like basically been adopted into the Call family, and I think he's actually their cousin like by blood too. But like his whole story arc is being afraid because he is actually super good at jade manipulation. But like he's afraid that the tolerance will be too much for him and he'll go crazy. That's not a great way to say that. He'll experience psychosis, and have suffer the same fate as his mom. And like I think that's very interesting. Also, he's just like a little cinnamon roll who absolutely just should not. She should get another family, despite the fact that they all love him very much. Hilo, who we'll talk about in a sec, comes to his school and he's like, "Hey, little cousin," and immediately starts to beat the shit out of him because, like, he wants to make his cousin to be a warrior. And then and it's just like, well, I can't. He's the fist of of No Peak, so I'm gonna get my ass kicked here. I just gotta take it. And he just like everybody in the school just watches Hilo wail on him, and it's just like poor kid. He's great.
Truly. He's amazing. I love Andon. The fact that Hilo calls him Andy threw me a couple of times. It's just like a weird, when you're talking with all these like Asian names, all of a sudden someone gets called Andy. You're like, whoa.
Hold on.
He doesn't deserve that. No, I love Andon. I think he's great. Yeah, but we are introduced to the concept of like jade hunger pretty early on with Barrow, a jade thief, which is how we start this story. He shows up and tries to steal jade from one of No Peak's fists, I think, or maybe the horn at the time.
I think it was a fist or a finger. It wasn't like anybody
Yeah.
super high up. It was just like some guy.
Yeah. It was he was some drunk, and I think Lon happened to be there too at the time. But yeah, so we're introduced to Barrow, and like he comes back, and I don't like him very much. But you're introduced to this like quote unquote jade hunger of like if you have too much jade all at once, you form this addiction, and it's not something you can fix except by abstaining from jade. And Andon gets put in a position where he has quite a bit of a scare. In order to save No Peak, he has to handle a lot of jade after only having handled like a little bit. And let's talk about Hilo, because Hilo reacts in a way.
Yeah, Hilo is I mean he's like kind of the heart of the story because like he's the one who does the most stuff, but he is the second sibling of the Call family. In the beginning, he is the Horn of No Peak, which is to be like the military leader, basically. He's young. He's like 28, I want to say. And like his whole thing is like going around to like he's like a nightmare, basically. Like he goes around to like all the clubs and the bars and like make sure people aren't causing trouble, and if they do, he just like beats the fuck out of them. And he likes it that way. And his like two right hand men are Wen's brothers, which is kind of nice. I really love the family dynamic there. um but yeah, Hilo is a hothead. His whole thing is fighting and taking action, and he's very much like in he's he's very much like the hothead archetype, where it's like, I want to go and fight the mountain before they do worse to us. And he keeps like telling Lon that in the first third of the book, and Lon's like, no, we have to play it cool, like we can handle this, like don't make trouble for me. And then Lon dies, and then Hilo's like, well, shit, now I don't have the smart person to give me counsel. I mean, there's Wen, but like, he like Lon being the that's what's so funny about Hilo's death, or not Hilo, but Lon's death, is that like when Lon dies, both the No Peak and the Mountain are like, oh fuck, god damn it, now Hilo's in charge, shit.
Which it's revealed that the leader of the mountain, Mada, who I love her, but she admits openly to Shay, she's like, I wasn't trying to kill that brother. I was trying to kill the other brother.
She's like, homie, I'm smart. Do you think I wanted Lon dead? He's normal. Hilo will do some shit. And yeah, God, all the characters and their motivations are so well deployed in this book. And like that's why, like, even though there are some spots of just like, politicking exposition, like I think it works really well. And like, gosh, we should talk about the Mountain real quick. They're basically the enemy gangsters.
Wait, hold on, we haven't talked about Shay.
Oh shit, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we missed Shay.
Shay is the younger sister. I think she's 26. She's been studying in Espenia, yes. I want to say.
Yes.
I keep getting Jade City's Englishmen mixed up with Poppy War's Englishmen.
Well, it's Espenia and Hesperia. I could see why.
Exactly. So, but yeah, Espenia, which is basically Fantasy Oxford, is where she got her business degree from. But like she moved back because like for a number of reasons. But the main thing was that like her fiance was
he dumped her.
Oh, he dumped her. Okay, because Lon got cheated on by his wife. But yes, Shay's fiance dumped her, and like there was one point where Hilo's like, I can kill him for you. And she's like, dude, come on.
No, what she says is, I can kill my own ex-boyfriends. Which is just an excellent line.
Yeah, which it's just very funny. But yeah, Shay comes back, and she's like, she was a little bit not outlawed, but ostracized from the family because they're like, don't go over to Espenia. And like that's kind of her whole arc, is like being brought back into the family after being disgraced. So like that's her whole thing, is like trying to not only balance like the fact that she wants to be independent and still not rely on the family, despite the fact that she's basically royalty in Jonloon, but also like dealing with the fact that they are her family, despite all the weird misogynist bullshit that goes along with this type of lifestyle. Like, she does care about Hilo and Lon, and when Lon dies, like it sort of snaps something in her, and she goes and gets her like fucking jade choker and her cool sword that's been sitting in a bank vault, and she's like, all right, I'm ready to murder people now, which is very cool. Shay gets in a really cool fight in book 2 that is incredible. You'll definitely look out for that. Yeah, Shay is probably my second favorite. I just think Hilo's too stupid.
Yeah, Hilo's really dumb. Yeah, I know. I feel for Shay as like also the daughter who left. I feel for that of like having to come back and like find your place all over again. And I mean, she's great because for a while, her stubborn ass was just like, "Nah, I know my family's rich, but I'm gonna hang out here in my own goddamn apartment. It's gonna be just fine." And no, I don't care that my hot neighbor was actually my brother's spy. Fuck that, I guess. But I mean, like, her hand would have been forced either way because even before Lon died, the landlord found out who she was. And, like, all of a sudden, the way she was treated changed. And I think it would have been inevitable, just, you know, the speed at which her return was happening. And before we move on to the mountain, fuck Doru. We're going to talk about him maybe as part of the mountain, but fuck that guy.
Yeah, all you have to know is he is the weatherman, which is like basically like the tactical advisor, like what's Jafar's he's like the vizier kind of like
Yeah.
the weatherman reads like the political situation essentially, whereas the fist reads the
The
military
horn.
situation. Yeah, oh, the horn. Yes, sorry. Um, and yeah, we'll talk about Doru. But yeah, the opposite clan is the Mountain Clan. Basically, after World War II, they split into two clans: the No Peak and the Mountain. The Mountain are the bad guys. They're much larger than No Peak, but they are like all good bad guys, very large, but not very expendable. Also, a lot of Mountain dudes get trashed in this book. And the main two people you need to know are Aitmata, who is the pillar of the mountain. She's like I want to say like 40, 50-year old like woman who like took over. She became the pillar because like once the old pillar died, she went and like murdered all her siblings in order to become the pillar, which is very cool. uh God, the villains in this book especially. I don't love the villains in book 2, but in this one, Mata and Gaunt Ash fucking own. Like the whole thing that Mata does is like she kidnaps Andon, and she like just has like as a threat, like she brings Andon to the mountain's house, and then she's just like, "Hey, would you want some tea?" And she's like, "Hey, by the way, you know, here's this shady political." She's off. I think she offered Andon a spot in the mountain, right? That was the thing, and he was like, and like it was very clearly like she didn't expect him to agree to it, but it was like an insult to be like, "Hey, we can come and get you whenever." Um, she is so menacing and evil and calculating, and I love her.
Yeah, I mean, my note for her says I don't like her, but I am gay for her a little. She's intimidating. I listen. Scary lady in a suit jacket is very much my type.
Oh yeah,
I love that
absolutely.
energy. And Gaunt Ash, if this book was written from the perspective of the mountain, he would probably be my favorite. He also has like big, scary dad energy, but like soft and
Mm-hmm.
hard for the people he actually cares about. And I'm like, if you weren't trying to kill my current babies, you would probably be my favorite.
Gaunt Ash, while I mean he does get some very good moments of characterization, he does have my favorite scene in media. I know Kipo is currently my favorite media property, but his attack on the Twice Lucky, which is basically like it's like a very fancy restaurant, um, is my favorite scene in media because so we established at the beginning the Twice Lucky is like this No Peak property that like you know they pay money to No Peak. They like No Peak takes a cut and they like protect them from you know robbers like what happens at the beginning of the book. And you know that they have a system of tithes basically. Like most businesses in John Loon are aligned either to one of the two clans, and that's how they make their money. And in return, you know, they do favors for them. Um, and so we get introduced to the Twice Lucky, and like the owner, who is like a loyal No Peak guy. Um, and then once this like battle starts kicking off, like the no like we get this perspective from the guy who owns the Twice Lucky, who's just like, hmm, well this sucks. There's like two No Peak like soldiers outside just keeping guard, and then like he's like, oh, things are going good, I guess. And then like he hears them get like fucking murdered, and then Got Ash walks through, and he's like, I've heard you guys have great crispy squid balls. I would like to try some. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, please don't hurt my employees. He's like, oh, sure. As long as, you'll start paying us the tithe. It looks like you can give us a little bit more money than you were giving No Peak. And he's like, oh, but I'm a No Peak loyalist. Like, you really can't, like, please don't make me go against them. He's like, oh, well, I can just start murdering all of your employees. It's fine. Like, it'd be super easy because I'm, like, a big buff dude and I have this cool sword. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll switch over. And he's like, awesome. Also, these crispy squid balls fucking slap. It's my favorite scene in media. It is a masterclass on tension, horror, but also like character building. I tweeted at Fonda Lee when I re-listened to the audiobook, and I was like, "Hey, this is the best scene ever," and she's like, "Oh, thanks."
The crispy squid balls are very funny because they make a return when Hilo faces down Gaunt Ash. And he's just like, this is my favorite restaurant. He's like, yeah, the fucking crispy squid balls. Oh, chef kiss. Like, it's just I think the pettiness in this book is supreme. There's a lot of pettiness that happens, and all of it is just A-class mastery. I will say, so I really like the perspective switching in this book. Perspective switching really goes 50-50 for me. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes I'm just, why do we need to be in this character's head? Thinking about you. What's that? What's the Thor one in Six of Crows? I already forgot his name.
Oh, the Matthias, I want to say?
Yeah. Why do I need to be in Matthias' head? He's just a bad racist.
He's just a racist douche.
Hate him. Kazan and Ash, but Matthias, I didn't need to be in his head. But yeah, the perspective switching in this one was cool because, like, first of all the chapters are super short. They're like 8 pages. And the perspective switch within chapters, and they're not like they're not like formally switched. Like, you don't get like a chapter heading saying, we're in Andon's head now. But you just kind of start with that perspective character, and it's like clearly from like within their head and what they're centralized on what they're feeling, though not exclusive to that situation. And there's a lot of really good world building that happens in there, and you like get the book is a slow start because there's just so much exposition and like so much, like, you're basically learning to speak a new language with all the like structure and titling. It takes a while, but like it's worth it. But it does, because I remember part of the reason we're recording this now or reading this book now is this is getting adapted to a series, which I am jazzed about. I want to see the cool sword fights so bad. But there's a lot of inner monologue happening. I'm very curious as to how that's going to get adapted.
Yeah, that is my only worry for the Peacock series, which is that, like, don't fuck it up, Peacock, please. This is a good series, and you can't, don't do them dirty.
I know.
That's all I'm asking.
I gotta, I'm not gonna make you read it because it's depressing, but The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak's like one of my favorite books of all time.
I've read that, yeah.
Yeah, it's sad. So, but it's written from the perspective of death, following this little girl around in Nazi Germany. Really sad book, really, really good book. But the movie did it dirty because death was no longer a character. And you're like, but that was the point.
That was the whole, like, God, that's so boring. Why would you be like, oh, we could have the Grim Reaper here? And then you could be like, nah, like, come on.
Like, it was just another Nazi movie, and I'm like, well, I've seen a billion of these. You know what I haven't seen? A Nazi movie from the perspective of death who became intrigued by a girl who, like, watched her brother die on a train. Like, she was marked by death and surrounded by death, and you had this, like, compassionate third point of view. And the, like, the visual adaptation could have kept it, but they took it out entirely, so it just, like, was boring. So, Peacock,
just be cool.
Do a good job. Be cool. Be cool.
So, like, Fonda Lee, with her whole world-building process, she occasionally she'll talk, actually, she mentored R.F. Kuang, so this is a tip that she told R.F. Kuang, so that I heard from an R.F. Kuang interview, which is that, one of her tricks is just to be like, okay, if you want to do world building, you should not have them go back to the same location every time. Like, you should have an excuse to, like, if you're going to a new chapter, like, make that chapter in a new location. So that way you can have an excuse to be like, okay, anyway, this is this whole location's deal and how it fits in the world, and that's like a good way to naturally introduce like opportunities for exposition instead of just being like, and now we're back on the spaceship and I have to go look in the data bank about this planet or whatever. Um, and like you can see how she deploys that in a couple different ways. Like when Shay has to go to the K-Con Jade Alliance like mining headquarters, and like it explains about how like the Jade that is mined is divvied up to the government, and then like she like does accounting and figures out that the somebody in the mountain is cooking the books. And that's like a cool way to do world building. Or like in the temple where she meets Aitmata, and like they have this whole explanation about the spirituality in John Loon, and like it's a really smart writing tip that I I that's why I follow people on Twitter, is to get writing tips, and that's a really really good one.
Yeah, I definitely love that scene where she goes to the mining headquarters, because the foreman is so fucking over it, and Shay just like disregards him completely. She's like, okay, yeah, I need X, Y, and Z. I brought a packed lunch. Just like, leave me to my business. Take me down. Let me see the mines. And he's taking her down the mines. There's a sign that's like, if you're jade sensitive, don't go further than this point. And she almost does. And he's like, hey, you shouldn't. She's like, I got it. And she goes, and she just stands there and has like 10 intrusive thoughts all at once. One of which is like, if I put my hand on the shiny big jade rock, what if I implode?
My whole skull will open up. That would be interesting.
But would it be worth the euphoria, that brief euphoria right before I died? Would it be worth it? And then she stops and thinks about it and goes, I got a job to do, and goes back and does the
I got homework. Damn.
She's so good. I love her very much. She's great. You mentioned, I did want to talk a little bit about the spirituality in this world, because I think it's approached cool. Usually when you get fantasy spirituality, or like fantasy religion, first of all, just like with any fantasy world building, you have like a direct analog, right? I've mentioned Dragon Age before, where you have like distinct analog to Catholicism. It's like, all right, Andraste's people are Catholics, I get it. And, the Qun is like a sloppy racist allegory for Islam. It's fine. It's not fine. But there's not like an allegory for the spirituality in John Loon. It doesn't really even get introduced like concretely or right away. It's just like vaguely called deism, just like worshiping a deity. And the only real construct you get of it is the penitents, who just kind of like a, they're kind of a formality. Like, they themselves believe in their religion, but their presence in the world is very like, don't say a cuss word in front of the monks.
Yeah,
then
exactly.
Your whole shit will go to hell. But I think the most interesting part about it is usually like, sometimes fantasy religions feel a little bit monolithic, So like, again, a Dragon Age is just like the example I'm most familiar with, because I spent the longest dissecting it. But like, you can say like, oh, this person is an Andrastian, and you can like kind of reliably know they believe in like X, Y, and Z. And there's never really like a variance in how much they believe or how devout they are. They're on kind of a binary devoutness to atheistic spectrum. Same thing with the Qun, which has a little bit more variance, but like not really. You hear a little bit about the Black Divine, which is like cool, goth Catholicism. But
also known as Catholicism.
No. But it's like not really mentioned outside of like, Tevinter's bad, there's slaves there, kind of thing. But I think the thing Fonda Lee does that's really, really interesting is in Shay and Hilo, you get this like very nuanced take on spirituality outside of organized religion. Right, so there's not like a commentary on the religion itself, but there is a commentary on what it does for those two individuals. So like for Hilo, he doesn't give a fuck. He's an atheist. He's like, I don't believe in this shit. I'm just kind of polite about it because I have to be, as like a high-ranking member of this crime family. For Shay, there's like an element of spirituality that isn't organized, which I found very interesting. Like, she goes to the temple and asks for a sign. She uses the temple as as a neutral meeting ground when she gets summoned by the mountain for a meeting. And she refers to the gods as being angry and vengeful. She's a little bit more superstitious than her brother. And I find that very, very interesting because you don't often get that nuance with, like, spirituality outside of the organization of religion in individuals in fiction, because it takes ostensibly more work to do that kind of world building. But I just wanted to compliment that because I picked up on it, and as, like, someone who went through, I thought I was Jewish for a couple of years because I went to a Jewish school because my mom faked my papers and no one told me otherwise. So for a couple of years I thought I was Jewish. Found out our family was supposed to be Orthodox Armenian, or Armenian Orthodox, and then but we weren't because the USSR was an atheistic union of countries, so we were forced to stop practicing as a family. And then my stepdad tried to make me Armenian Orthodox again, and then I found out, and then I was like, I went through my, like, annoying atheist phase, and then a loop back around into, like, an amorphous spirituality. So I respect that, basically. What comes at the end of that? I really like new takes on religion. Listen, as much as we love to shit on the Catholics, it is boring to always have them as villains.
Yeah, listen, there are plenty of examples of Catholics being villains in real life. We don't need to always drink from the Inquisition well. But I do think that, like, your experience of religion is kind of a good point. Like, most people don't have a unified, like, version of religion, like video games, or my other standpoint was, like, Star Wars, where everyone's like, the Force, it moves through us and it's in life and stuff. And everybody just sort of accepts that. Like, most people in our world, like, have a nuanced take on religion. They've if they've thought about it because they're deep into a religion, they probably have some ideas. Whereas if you are not into it, there's probably a reason why, and you've probably given that a lot of thought too. And, like, a lot of people fall somewhere in between, full blown atheist and fanatic. Like, most people are just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to make a judgment call about things that big. But, like Shay's whole practice is like, I don't know if I 100% believe in all this, but it makes me feel, connected to something. And I think that's important to, like, John Luna is a very believable society, right? They've got, an underbelly of criminals that, like, is well organized, but also they've got, like, politicians that are out of touch with the people and are self-interested. And
I would call it an overbelly of criminal activity.
Okay, yeah, I mean, but that's the thing though. Like, the reason that Fonda Lee made them, not like they're gangsters, but they're not criminals. Like the cops don't fuck with the Jade Warriors. One, because they're, like, fucking psychic ninjas essentially, and two, because it's, like, patterned off of the Yakuza and mafia who I guess the mafia were technically illegal, but, like, Yakuza weren't illegal for a while in Japan, allegedly. Not allegedly, according to this interview I listened to. And, like, she wanted to explore the idea of, like, yeah, I mean, like, they're essentially, like, a part of the government, and, like, they have to, like, the prime minister of K-Con has to take meetings with Hilo and be like, hey, sorry about your brother. Now you're in charge of the one of the biggest factions in this country, and you're, what, 28, and your main hobbies are punching and fucking, and you're all out of fucking? Cool. Love that.
Well, he is famously not out of fucking, because one night Shay couldn't sleep, and she's like, if I have to feel him fucking through the wall.
That's true, because you can feel people's Jade auras, and when Shay finally moves in, and when also moves in, she's like, oh my god, he's so horny, this is the worst, I should have stayed in Hispania. That would suck if you could feel your sibling boning down. The worst.
Yeah, psychically, just truly
hysterical.
a nightmare.
Yeah, it rules. In general, though, like, if you are somebody who is interested in, like, writing stuff, you should follow Fonda Lee. Like, I think she does dispense some pretty good writing advice. Like, one of the things that I've followed is like she's like, hey, if you're a new writer, probably don't start with a trilogy. They're hard, and maybe just practice on some one-offs for a bit before you try to break out a doorstopper. Or like she explained that her whole process of creating a new book is like, I'm just gonna take 2 months, consume all the media about this topic that I think I can, and call it research. Just like watching videos and reading manga and doing stuff like that. And I think that's really it's a really fun, and I'm gonna implement that once I finish the act one of my book. I'm just gonna be like, okay, now I'm just gonna take the next month and read all about dinosaurs, and it's gonna be great. Um, so I think she's really really smart, and I am just so surprised that more people aren't on the Jade City train, because like it's a fascinating series with a bunch of really cool characters. And I don't know, like you said, you had some preconceptions about this series, and I was wondering if you could break those down and maybe we could figure out why people aren't crazy about Jade City.
I mean, listen, I'm a professional with communication skills. Um, my preconceptions weren't about the story. My preconceptions, I think, stem from that thing of like anyone writing in the fantasy space is writing YA fantasy. Now, mind you, I'm just coming off of to a duology I read over like right before my production break started, right before we went off air for a little while, where it what is it called? It's Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves are the two books, and they're a great time if you like just like fun, harmless YA melodrama, which I needed at the moment and I got. But it's a duology where you get a conflict and it's like, oh no, one of my many siblings has been kidnapped, and then there's like an immediate solution, and there's never like a setback to the solution, So it's I guess coming out of that brain space, I walked in and was greeted with like actual sex scenes and a little bit of body horror every once in a while. And I was sitting there reading about Andon walking in on his mom in a bathtub with a cheese grater, and I was like, was not expecting that. And then, Hilo pops into Wen's bedroom when we first meet her, and like immediately they're fucking, and like it doesn't fade to black. I'm like, oh my god. I felt like prudish almost just because I didn't expect it, like I didn't know where it was going. I was like, oh my god, oh lordy, oh god, what's happening? And it was just a funny thing to notice about like having been in a very like YA brain space and then being met with like adult fiction, where I'm like, oh, I forgot that like R.F. Kuang and Fonda Lee and like S.A. Chakraborty like write for adults, and we've moved on at least partially from this thing of like fantasy only being for teens and J.R.R. Tolkien. So those were my misconceptions. It wasn't so much like someone told me the story was like, I knew it was a good book, like you and my friend Marty both really like it, but I was not expecting to be treated to not one but two bonings.
Yes, multiple bone downs. Yeah, no, it's right. That's an interesting point. Like there is authors of adult fantasy always complain about like being called YA, and they're like, please don't give this to your 13-year-old. It will make them. It'll be a lot for them. Not to say that 13-year-olds can't handle sex scenes, obviously, but just like you should know what you're getting into. And Jade City is a very adult themed book, and like I don't know, right? Like that's the whole adult YA divide, is like what not necessarily that one is better than the other, but like when you are writing with YA, like you're kind of writing to a wider audience, right? Not only because YA is typically regarded as the thing that sells blockbusters, with your Divergence and your Hunger Games, etc. But like I think you can explore more interesting ideas, not necessarily just ideas about getting laid, but like you know you probably wouldn't have in a scene about accounting in the Hunger Games, right there is like some romantic drama, but it's not very tense, right? And I think that's an important thing to know, is that like it's adult series, and sometimes adult series get it right. Like it doesn't stray into the tropes of like grimdark fantasy, and when I mean grimdark, I mean fucking Game of Thrones, and like sexual assault, and being like, and then the intestines got pulled out by the big sword and he wrapped them around his sword and then he used the intestines to choke another guy out. Like, I mean, there is a lot of violence and bloodshed, but I don't think it is in a gratuitous way. um and I think that this is like a very good example of why fantasy should be considered as an evolving genre, and is just like your Game of Thrones. Like, I'm very frustrated that this series hasn't taken off, because it's incredible, and I fear it's just because like the protagonists are Asian, right? There's very few white people in this book, and like I don't know. I feel like, well, with the what is that series? I think it's on Netflix. Is it The Untamed? That's about Chinese vampires.
Vampires? I don't know if they're vampires, but yeah.
I don't know, but like I feel like that sort of thing, like, is paving the way for like more people to widely accept East Asian faces in media, and I would really like to see that, because the more East Asian people we get in media, the more Southeast Asian people ideally we get in media. We want to darken our media a little bit, and move it a little bit away from just having pretty white people in it. And I really want to. That's why Peacock, you cannot screw this up. I know you'll have The Office, and that's great, but like, please don't do one of this. Would be a terribly important series for Asian folks. If it goes well, I'm begging you,
Yeah, Peacock.
Mr. MSNBC.
Doing its service pricing based on how much of The Office you can watch is the funniest thing I have seen in years. It is.
Wait, hold on. Is that a joke?
No, it's for real.
What?
Their pricing structure is based on how much access to The Office you can have.
What?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
So, with the free version, you only get seasons 1 and 2, and you have to watch ads on all the other programming. And then there's 2 more tiers, and one of them is like you get the rest of it with ads, and the rest of it with no ads, I'm pretty sure.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, no, I'm dead ass
serious. They paywall The Office. That rules.
They took The Office from Netflix, thus ridding every man on Tinder of a personality. And then based their entire price, which, you know what, is just some kind of king shit, I think. Like, yeah, it is a sad statement to the state of our media that we haven't come up with an original enough sitcom idea that it's taken off the way The Office has, thusly giving nobody anything to watch since 2008 when it went off the air. But if I were sitting in the boardroom at Peacock going, okay, Quibi just debunked. Netflix and Hulu and Crunchyroll actually are doing really, really well. We gotta figure out what to do. And some interns like, what about The Office? And then the logical end conclusion is we take The Office back from Netflix and then build our entire fucking pricing structure around it. You gotta do what you gotta do. That's king shit. I'm into it.
No, I love that. It's very much like, oh, you little sickos love The Office so much. How much you pay increasing amounts of money to see Dwight do his cool jokes about beats?
And then, you know what? If enough people don't pay for it, that's still good, because it'll force someone else to come up with a new Office sitcom. I'm begging you people, please, just like, I haven't had anything to passively watch since Parks and Rec. You gotta help me out a little bit. I think the other thing, in terms of like the adult fiction point you had just made, is this also translates into animation, which new listeners, I work in animation. I work on a quote-unquote adult TV show, like geared towards adults. And there is this, like, propensity to, in quote-unquote adult cartoons, not only the one I work on, but the one I work on isn't even really that guilty of this. Oh my god, there's a new one with Quinta B. It's like a magical girl series on one of the streaming networks. But there's just this, like, desire for it to be all, like, cussing and dick jokes, which, listen, I love a dick joke. Sometimes they're very funny. But it doesn't need to be all the time. It doesn't need to be all cuss words. Like, I also want a story about friendship. Like, Mad Max was a story about friendship. I love that movie. Fury Road. You know, you could do that in, like, an adult-geared animated show. Which is why, Peacock, I think you should have made Jade City animated. Like, listen, you could, as long as you cast correctly and you have, you know, Asian folks where Asian folks should be. I have hope in you making this a dope live-action series. But think of all the cool shit you could do on a smaller budget if you made it animated and still hired Asian people to voice all the characters. And design all the characters. And design the cities. Could be cool, but no one wants to do that because Game of Thrones ruined it for everyone.
I mean, that's such a good point, though. Like, you save so much money by doing it animated, right? You don't have to pay through the nose for CGI. You can just have, you know, people draw it. Like, I don't understand.
Okay, not that much money, though.
I mean,
artists.
Yeah, no, I mean, please don't save that much money, but, like, right, like, with Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? If you wanted to make a movie of Avatar, it was already animated. You could have just made another animated. You could have done the fucking Evangelion thing, where you make a movie out of the thing that's already a thing, and then people, for some reason, love it. You could have done that with Avatar. Like, I don't understand why folks... there's this weird mentality that animated shit doesn't sell. Like, you've seen Pixar, y'all. Like...
I know. It's that weird, like, monopoly on animation, too, where, you know, Disney and Pixar have essentially a monopoly with DreamWorks, you know, in there, but it's not the Disney Pixar trust, you know? And there's this desire, there's this weird evasion to anything coming out of East or Southeast Asia, or even Central Asia. Russia used to have a really thriving animation community. Japan, Korea, and China certainly do. But, you know, when was the last time you watched a Chinese film? There's a Chinese film animated feature called Nezha that's on Netflix. It was charming as hell. Not my favorite thing, but charming as hell. I really enjoyed watching it. I had a great time. There's a couple other ones. Obviously, like, the entire anime industry gets ignored in the mainstream. Like, why Promare didn't get an Oscar, don't know. Why it wasn't eligible, should have. I love that movie, if you haven't noticed.
I mean, I don't know. The Oscars are gonna put, like, fucking, you know, Parasite in foreign films because it's, you know, you have to use captions or whatever. No, I'm thinking of something else, but, like, you know, Parasite won all those.
I'm pretty sure it was Parasite.
Yeah, cool. Great.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is there's such a competition for America to be the exporter of media and culture because we're so afraid of, like, you know, the Chinese communists. And it's like, okay, but we can't ignore an entire thriving media industry. Like, that's not something we should be doing. It's silencing a lot of voices. And yes, mainland Chinese entertainment is different than Chinese American or Chinese Canadian perceptions of Asian identity or the way they see the world. But, like, so we should be... and even, you know, movies like France is a thriving animation industry. When was the last time you saw a French movie? You know what I mean? Like a French animated film. There's plenty. When was the last time? So it's just, aside from Code Lyoko, but
that's a masterwork. It's its own class.
It's a French masterwork. But yeah, it's a bummer that America is so, like, bathed in its own weird, gritty. It's a whole. I read an article. It's a whole phenomenon. Like, after 9/11, we just went crazy and everything's, like, gritty and realistic, and we, like, lost a sense of whimsy and everything's live action and the only animated stuff is for kids. And I'm like, ugh. Shrek did so well, though. I wish Shrek.
They had 4 or 5 Shrek movies. Like, y'all, come on.
I know. I'm like, oh, come on, we can do better though. And I think Jade City falls into that. Like, I think there's room to adapt it, but I would have loved to see like a cool, like animated version of it too. I think it would have been dope. But I have faith for the live action. I am curious as to how they're gonna handle all that inner monologuing though.
Yeah, we'll definitely, if we continue, if our Republic continues to the point where we can watch that, we'll probably cover it. Gosh, when we're famous, we'll definitely make sure that all our stuff is animated, unless we don't want it to be animated. And it'll be great.
And you can make us famous by reviewing our podcast on iTunes. Leave us a review on iTunes.
Please, we have like 2. One of them is me. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I got.
Yeah, this is a really dope book. Thank you for letting me read it. It's one of those books that like there were points during reading it where I was just like, yeah, I can see why he likes this.
Oh, great. Good.
This is very like nitty gritty dweeb shit, and I'm like,
I mean, yeah, there's some dork shit in there. It's fine. I am who I am.
Hey, we got a new review, actually.
Oh, sick! Really?
Yeah, we did.
From who? Who's the user?
I don't know.
Okay.
But
what did they say?
It says, "These two slay." Thanks.
You know what? We do slay. Thank you, anonymous user. You kick ass. If you want to hear us slay some more, what are we doing next week?
That's a really great question, Aaron. Because we did knock our schedule a little bit out of sorts.
Yeah. Man, our first non-Trump administration podcast. You're going to be able to feel the energy in that one.
Yeah, this is the last episode of the Trump administration. That's crazy.
Knock on wood.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, so next week, dear listeners, we are treating ourselves to the greatest motion picture of all time, The Greatest Showman.
Oh, no!
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, I forgot we were doing that one again.
Yeah, we're doing The Greatest Showman, and then you can join us in February as we talk about The Age of Calamity. We'll read the McElroy's great podcasting book. Maybe we'll be better at making a show. Aaron's going to play Grease, which is a platformer that is very, very pretty. And then we're going to do a little Witch Academia to round it all out.
Perfect. Yeah, that'll be good. I'm looking forward to that. That's a good roundup, even with The Greatest Showman.
Even with The Greatest Showman, which...
Oh, I'm excited.
It's, this is the greatest show.
This is the greatest show. Mortified the Friendship Quest right here. Oh, Leyla, where can people find you on the internet?
I am still, as always, at LEYLSES on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. I still write essays. I will come back to my comic, but we're just kind of taking it one day at a time right now. Knocking on wood. Just doing things. Aaron, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL. You can also find the other podcast I do at MBMBF and me. Our episode about Prince Caspian just went up, the sequel to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was not very good, but you did get to hear the Capitol Police in the background as Michael talked about how he's had also a rough week that week we recorded it. So please check us out there. Our theme song is Obsolete by Keshko from the from the album Filmmakers Reference Kit Volume 2. You can find more of their music at keshko.bandcamp.com. Oh, Leyla, do you want to close it out like we do in John Loon?
Well, as we say,
the clan is my blood, and the pillar is its master.
Oh my god, okay!